In this video, you will be learning about context variables. We'll start with understanding what the context variable is, and then we'll move on to a different topics, and we'll also have a hands-on session in this video. So keep watching. So what is context variable? A context variable is a variable that can hold different values in different environment. For example, if you're creating a talent job, in dev and then you promote to QA and then to prod. In each of the environment, you can have your connection details as separate. You can have environment related variables as well, through which you can change the values for a particular variable and then have it passed to the job, right? That's the context variable. A group is nothing but a set of variables which we create for a particular activity. For example, you create a database connection, you will have all the database related connection details like username, database, password, and everything. And if you are creating a logical or a business related group, you can create such group and then use it across your branch. All right, so why do we use context variables? They are primarily used for um, avoiding hard-coded values in your talent job so that you can parameterize it. You can read the values dynamically during the execution of the job, or you can set it to load as soon as your job is started. So next we'll look at type of context, the implicit context and then the explicit. The main difference is that implicit is something defined at the entire project level. If you have 500 jobs and you want one of the connection to be available across all those 500, then you make use of the implicit through which you can load a common variables and their values. For example, if you are using a SQL Server connection, you can load that in your project and then keep using it. And of course, you can bypass this if certain batch is not required, right? So that is all about implicit. In the explicit, these are used at the batch level. So if you out of 500 jobs, you have 10 different batch, and one of the batch requires one set of variables, and the second batch requires another set of variables, then you should be going with explicit so that you can have your own variables that are appropriate for that batch gets loaded during that load. So these are the primary differences. We will next go with the hands-on. All right. So for that, we will move on to our file system, wherein I'll show you the context file that I created. All right. So this is my local folder wherein I'm calling a Talend, and under that, I have several folders created for input, output, archive and config. It's always a standard better practice to create a standard folder structure and then you start adding all the variables and that are related to different environment. So you can have variables that are very much specific to dev. Those values will be captured here, and if not QA prod, you can arrange it as needed. So for this implicit context, since it's going to be a project level, you will be making use of this property file. And these are the content. Basically, what I am saving is the host, port, database, and user credentials in a file. And we will use this file in our Talend job. All right, let's move on to our Talend. So in order to make use of context, there are few steps. The first one is to create your folders and file on the file system. And next thing comes is your project setting. When you go to file and then edit project properties, under that you will have a job setting, and under that you will have an implicit context load. As you can see, by default, this option will be unchecked. All you have to do is check this implicit context load, and then you can start choosing this file. And initially it will be blank. All you can do is just click on this browse button, and then you can select this. Now that we have set the project properties, the next step is to create context. I have already created one context here. I'm going to edit and show you the different settings available. Once you create a new context, you will be able to see the screen. You can click on this plus sign and then create as many variables you want. And remember, these names should match with the names in your context file. The name should be exactly used here as well. Once this is created, you can create another variable which specify the connection file details. I'll show you in the next example how this can be used. So for now, we'll make use of these first five variables. And if you notice, the default section has no values. The purpose of this is to let job get these default values when the context file is missing or has no value or any missing values, right? So that this is the purpose of default. And of course, you can create different groups here, one for each of the environment. For example, you can create a dev, QA, and prod and things like that. We will look at that example in this same video in next few minutes. So for now, we'll just use the first five. Click on finish. All right, now that we have set our context file, we have set our project properties, we have created a context. All we have to do is come to this section. All we have to do is just drag and drop under the context section. Now you should be able to see those variables have copied into the job. Right now, no values have been copied. The values for these variable will be captured during the runtime of the job, and we will start using it. All right, now that we have added the context, next step is to um, create some of the components to read that value and print it on the console. So for that, I'm going to use the fixed flow input. As the name suggests, you can pass, you can create your custom columns, and you can also pass custom values for those columns. In this example, we'll be creating those five um, columns here, which we can call it as host, port, database, user, and then the password field. All right, so we have created five fields, and the values for these fields will come from the context. For that, what we have to do is just type in context, put a dot, or even you can just do a control space, and it'll show you all the available options in the current job. All you can do is just hit control and then space. You will get to see the list of context available. So under that, we will directly make use of this support. Next is our database, and then the user, and the last one is your password. All right, now that we have mapped each of this column with the respective context variable, so when we run this job, the value of those variables will be read and printed on the console. So now that we have read those values, we have to print it on the console, right? For that, all you can do is just do a left click on your mouse, hit and then drag it somewhere, and you can type in tlog row. So this is the component where you can print any incoming values to the console. Um, you can uh, you can use it pretty much anywhere when you are testing it. For that, I will go ahead and sync the column so that we have all the columns coming from the source. You can edit and see. All right, all the columns are now properly matched. And the next thing is I'll choose the table value. So this is easy to read how the values will be printed. All right, so now you can save the job and click on run and then click run. All right, so as you can see, our variables are printed and then the values for the corresponding um, variables are now also printed. All right, so let's do a quick change so that we can see how it works. Now I'll open up my property file and then just type in some extra characters in the file, save it. And let's run the job again as is. All right, as you can see, whatever changes you do to the property file, it is read during the execution of the talent job, and also we print it in the console. So this is the example for implicit file load for all the context. Now we will move on to MySQL Workbench. So this is where I have created one table called config, and there are two columns in it. One is the key and then the value. And I have actually inserted the same value as of the file into this table so that we will start using this table as is directly in our job. So this is the table where we have all the variables, and along with that, we have values. We'll move on to the talent, and with the same exact setting, we're not changing anything on the job. We will go to the project properties, and now we will change from file to from database. And this database is directly pointing to our MySQL where we created the table, right? All we have to do is choose a host name, port, and the DB name, username, password, and the table name. So this is the table we have stored all the variables. Just click on apply and close, and we will go ahead and click on yes so that these changes will be propagated to all the jobs which we are using it. All right, go ahead and click on save. And without any change, we can go ahead and run the job, and you should be able to see these values coming directly from the database. These are the database values. So the same details are printed here on the console. So this is all about implicit context load. Now we will look at loading the context file manually instead of using the implicit. So for that, we will go back to edit properties, and we will uncheck this option so that the files will not be loaded as soon as we run the job. And instead, what we will do is we will make use of inbuilt component to read this file and set the values for our talent job. All right, so in order to do that, you can go to the palette. You can minimize all other unwanted ones. You can directly go to file input, and you can choose this file input delimited. You can do it this way, or you can just directly just click on job design and then click file, and you'll be able to see this component also. So these are the two options. All right, so now let's make use of this particular file. All right, so in order to do that, we'll click on browse, and we'll go to the talent folder where we have this config file. So we will go ahead and choose the file from dev. All right, so now we have chosen this file. Next thing, what we do is we will have to set this context variable. See, we already have the uh, context variables added to the job, but currently there are no values assigned to these variables. For that, what you can do is there's a component called tContext load. So this is the component through which we can load the values for these variables from an external file. Go ahead and use this option. Now this is loaded. There's another option here I can show you. Just do a right click on main, and then connect to the target component. And all you do is hit save, and then you can go to the run tab and clear the last run, and let's run it and see if it is working. All right, it's giving some compile error. Let's see what it is. A value cannot be resolved. So for that, I think the values, yes. So what we did is even though we created the file name, but there are no columns associated with it. So for that, click on edit schema, and then create two columns here. one is the key, and another one is the value. All right, so it always context always needs these two key and value pair so that they properly set the values. So I purposefully miss this so that I can show you how to troubleshoot in case of issues with context load. All right, now that we have created here, and if you now go back and see, those key and value are now matching. Click OK, go to the Run tab, click on Run. All right, so now at least we are reading 6, but we are not printing it. Properties here. All right, so this is the file that we are reading, and this is the separator. All right, so this is the problem, right? The field separator, what we have used is comma, but what we have by default is semicolon. So now that we have made this change, let's go ahead and then run the job again. All right, so as you can see, the host has got host and all these variables has got proper values from the file that we are read. So this concludes loading the context variable file explicitly in a particular job. If these variables are not used in some other job, then there's no point in doing the implicit load and unnecessarily passing all the variable values. So any job specific or batch specific context can be used in this way. Now we look at the second option, which is to load the context from a database and then print the values. In order to save some time, I have already pulled this component and built this job. Let me go ahead and explain it to you. So I have a new table created, and these are the contents of the file. Basically, I'm storing the URL and then the parameter that is required. And on the Talend side, I have pulled one file input delimiter component through which I am reading a common file. So this file contains the connection details to our database. So the reason we want to do is to avoid the hard-coded values for our DB context, because in each and every environment, for example, dev, QA, prod, the connection details might change. So we should be always looking at making these values dynamic. So for that reason, I'm keeping a common context file in all the environment. And as soon as a job is run in dev, it will pick up all the dev connections and create the connection. And using the DB input component, I'm reading the new table that I created. And we will be setting up the new context, which I created for a URL parameter. So if you recall, the table has got URL and parameter, so the same names I've used in our context. And since this is these two variables are very much needed for my one of the job, which will not be used across all other. So I am making them as local variables, and then I'm setting the values. So once that value is set, I'm printing using the system out dot print line. I'm printing the context values, and I'm concatenating the URL part and then the parameter part. So that's all. Reading the file, getting the connection details, creating the DB connection, and reading a table, and then setting up the value. Right. So that's pretty much it. Let me go ahead and quickly run this job. All right, the job is now succeeded. So if you carefully observe, the context load 4 is our first context load. This is where I am loading my connection details, and I'm creating the connection here, and then I'm reading the values and then setting up the context using 3 context load 3. So these are the context load 3. I'm reading those URL and then the parameter, and this is how it is getting printed in my tjava. So in tjava, I have this context values printing URL concatenated with param, which is printed here. All right, that's all for now. This is how we take care of implicit context load from a file from a database. and explicit context load from a file and a database.